Genetics professor clones his wife in an attempt to recreate the exact version he fell in love with. Professor Adam Slope reveals to his wife, Dawn, that she's actually a clone of someone who perished in a fire. Dawn refuses to accept this and ends up falling from the attic entrance as she backs away. Prior to this tragic event, Adam had hesitated to propose to Dawn, who was still his girlfriend at the time. He tried to wake her up with the sound of the ring box closing, but she remained asleep. Consequently, he made breakfast for her, repeatedly cooking pancakes until he made perfect ones. He then surprised her with breakfast in bed. However, before he could propose, Dawn excused herself to use the bathroom, leaving Adam anxious. He then entered the bathroom and popped the big question. Dawn found the proposal charming and unique but pointed out that no other woman would likely accept such a proposal. Later that day, Dawn discussed the proposal with her friend, Camille, at her glass-blowing studio. Dawn admitted it wasn't her dream proposal but appreciated its intimate, sweet, and spontaneous nature. Meanwhile, Adam continued his lectures at the local university, where a student named Emma expressed interest in becoming his lab assistant. However, Adam politely declined her offer. After getting married, Adam and Dawn settled their insurance papers in case anything terrible happened to either of them. Tragically, one day while working in her studio, a fire broke out after a piece of ember ignited a stack of newspapers. The door jammed, and Dawn was unable to escape, leading to her death. Devastated by the news, Adam attended Dawn's funeral and reminisced about how they first met at an art museum. He remembered seeing her beautiful smile from behind a row of vases, which marked the beginning of their love story. After the funeral, Adam's friends tried to console him, but he grieved alone at home, calling Dawn's phone repeatedly to hear her voice on the voicemail and watching their wedding tape. He struggled to fill out Dawn's proof of death form, as signing it meant accepting her passing. One day, as he was about to sign the form, his lab experiment informed him that his cloning project was successful. Excited, he took out the cloned mouse, and an idea struck him. He found a strand of Dawn's hair at home and brought it to his lab. Just as he was about to start cloning her, he hesitated. The next day, while discussing the challenges of cloning and growth rates in class, Emma suggested using Werner syndrome to speed up the aging process. Adam asked if she still wanted to be his lab assistant, and she agreed. After dismissing the class, they went to his lab to start their experiment, despite the ethical ambiguity. As they began cloning, Emma realized Adam was attempting to clone a human, which was illegal and could cost him his job. Despite her reservations, she ultimately decided to help him. They successfully cloned Dawn, but she grew too fast. Adam dismissed Emma's concerns and took the clone to his car. Suddenly, Adam noticed that Dawn had aged rapidly. It turned out he hadn't adjusted her growth rate correctly, which Emma had warned him about. Dawn soon died of old age, and Emma helped Adam dispose of the body using a furnace in his basement. Over the following days, they tried the experiment again, this time testing it on mice first. Adam allowed Emma to clone a mouse using a slower process. However, she took a sample from a clone, causing the mouse to explode in her face. Adam then informed her that she couldn't make a clone from a clone. Despite their numerous failed attempts, they eventually realized they could potentially manipulate Dawn's growth for 3 months. So, they began cloning her as an infant. Unbeknownst to Adam, Trout, the insurance agent, was suspicious about Dawn's death, especially since she died only weeks after Adam had purchased a $1 million insurance policy. He decided to observe Adam and saw him carrying a baby into his house, which happened to be Dawn's clone. As the days passed, Dawn grew into a young girl and learned how to behave. At one point, she pointed to the vase holding the real Dawn's ashes, making Adam move it to the attic to alleviate his guilt. Dawn continued to grow, with Trout secretly watching them. However, when she reached adulthood, her teeth began to deform, and Adam felt more like he was raising a daughter than having his wife back since Dawn acted somewhat unruly. That night, Dawn's parents, Rebecca and Harold, decided to visit Adam. Meanwhile, Dawn's clone realized she wasn't normal because her teeth fell out, and she grew faster than Adam. Adam decided to tell her the truth and led her to the attic where Dawn's ashes were. As Dawn's parents arrived, Rebecca caught a glimpse of Dawn from the attic, becoming horrified and demanding Harold to take her home. In the attic, Adam told Dawn about her death, but she struggled to process the truth. After disposing of the body in the furnace, Adam sadly rewatched his wedding tape. Days later, Adam visited a therapist and shared his dream of cloning his wife, who wasn't the same. The therapist explained that genetics is only a small part of who we are and that for Dawn to remain the same, she would need to be raised by her own parents. Adam then visited Dawn's parents and suggested cloning Dawn, but Harold slapped him in response. The following day, Adam asked Emma to raise the clone, but she refused. Adam lashed out, and Emma eventually agreed out of sympathy. While Emma raised the clone the way Dawn's parents did, Adam started hanging out with his friends again. Months later, Emma brought a fully grown, angsty, and rebellious Dawn to Adam's house. As they lived together, the clone had difficulty adjusting, and Adam slowly realized she was far from his wife. He tried to propose to her, but Dawn rejected him. Later that day, he pleaded with Emma to take Dawn back, but she refused. Unbeknownst to them, Dawn listened to their conversation and became so confused about her purpose that she ended her own life. With no other option, they dispose of the body. After this, Adam puts the clone's ashes in a separate vase, and Emma consoles him. However, he still plans to clone Dawn again, but this time, someone else will raise her. Days later, he brings the baby clone to Camille and asks her to raise Dawn for 4 months. Camille is initially weirded out by his request but eventually agrees. Adam gives her a list of experiences the clone needs to have to develop Dawn's personality. Camille requests that Adam propose to Dawn in a bouncy house this time and insists on letting Dawn experience prom because it was a milestone for her. Unfortunately, after prom, Dawn goes home with her date, Wyatt, and falls in love with him, refusing to go with Adam. The following day, Adam expresses his frustration to Emma. She tries to make sense of the situation, but he disregards her insights. He attempts to clone Dawn again, but Emma stops him since the other one is still alive. Days later, Adam's frustration boils over in class, leading to an outburst. Emma confronts him, saying he needs to control himself. Adam argues that she doesn't understand what it's like to lose someone, but Emma reveals she lost her father after he failed to get a heart transplant. She explains that losing someone they love changes people. Later, Adam goes to Wyatt's house, but Wyatt threatens to call the police. Adam isn't scared, knowing they'll just take Dawn away. He offers to help Dawn, aware that Wyatt is also witnessing her rapid growth, which he can suppress with medicine. Adam tells Dawn she has Werner syndrome and will die if he doesn't help her. However, helping her would mean leaving Wyatt, so Dawn kisses Wyatt in front of Adam, declaring she'd rather spend her last moments with him. Wyatt, desperate to save her, asks Adam for help. Enraged by what he witnessed, Adam pretends to help them but injects Dawn with euthanasia, which ultimately kills her. Subsequently, Adam feigns sympathy and heads back to the lab. Upon hearing of his actions, Emma becomes infuriated with him. She shouts at him, insisting that Dawn is gone forever, and he'll never bring her back. Adam remains unfazed, leading Emma to realize he won't stop. Before departing for good, she shares her disappointment and feelings of being used. She hugs him and leaves. Despite being left alone, Adam persists in cloning Dawn. This time, he asks his friend Juan to raise her. However, she fails to live up to Adam's expectations, so he creates another clone, which also disappoints him. Unknown to Adam, Emma had secretly entered his lab and made a clone, which she placed in an orphanage. Months later, she pretends to adopt and discovers that she cloned Adam, who is now a grown man with the mind of a child. The nun is puzzled by her choice, but she lets him go anyway. As Emma takes the clone of Adam home, they pass by the insurance company, catching Trout's attention. At the same time, Adam clings to the last strand of Dawn's hair, praying that the next clone will be successful. Unfortunately, this clone becomes an alcoholic, leading Adam to sadly add euthanasia to her drink. He places her ashes in a vase and stores it in the attic with the other failed clones. Later, Adam grows even more desperate to resurrect Dawn. In his desperation, he uses a sample from a clone, which, as expected, leads to an explosion. Meanwhile, Trout informs Dawn's parents about Adam's $1 million life insurance purchase just before their daughter's death. Harold doesn't understand the implications, but Rebecca believes that her daughter's spirit has been trapped ever since she saw her in Adam's attic. The next day, Dawn's parents confront Adam, and he finally confesses to cloning her. Despite acknowledging the futility of his efforts, Rebecca begs him to attempt once more, desperate to have her daughter back. Consequently, they join forces to search for a sample and find a strand of Dawn's hair. As Adam starts the cloning process, Trout sneaks into his home and uncovers human teeth remnants in the furnace. Meanwhile, Adam presents the baby clone to Rebecca and Harold, who are overjoyed to hold their daughter again. However, upon returning home, Adam is met by Trout, who suspects he faked his wife's death to collect the insurance money. Trout speculates that Adam fell for his lab assistant, and when Dawn discovered the affair, he killed her. Adam tries to explain the situation, but Trout dismisses his explanation. At that moment, Trout requests a drink and points to the bottle containing euthanaise. Realizing he's already in a tight spot, Adam decides to serve him the drink. Trout proposes that he'll approve the claim and remain silent if Adam hands over the money. Adam pretends to agree, knowing that the threat will soon be eliminated. As expected, Trout dies, and Adam incinerates him in the furnace. Before doing so, Adam preserves samples of Trout's DNA to create a clone and avert suspicion of the actual Trout's murder. He then contacts the police and hands over the clone. Months later, Rebecca and Harold bring Dawn to Adam, and she is remarkably like the original. Since she was raised by her parents, she acquired some of Dawn's characteristics and interests. However, when Adam expresses his love for her, she frowns, responding that she doesn't reciprocate his feelings. Adam insists that she does and claims to know her better than she knows herself. To elaborate, he takes Dawn to the attic and reveals the truth about her origin. Overwhelmed by the revelation, she retreats. Before she can fall again, Adam catches her, but in the process, she accidentally shatters the vase containing the real Dawn's ashes. While tidying up, she spots a wedding photo of Adam and Dawn and remarks that he looks different in it. She then insists on returning home. The next day, Adam consults his therapist, who helps him understand that he can never move forward unless he lets Dawn go. This realization prompts him to release the clone, send her back to her parents, and bury the real Dawn's ashes in the cemetery. Upon returning home, he receives $1 million from the insurance payout. One day, as Emma is kissing Adam's clone, she gets a call from the real Adam. He informs her that he successfully created a clone identical to Dawn, and even though she doesn't love him, he's at peace with it. He expresses his desire to work on actual projects with Emma, but she declines, citing her thesis work. Adam rushes to the library, only to catch his clone and Emma kissing. He punches the clone, then realizes who it is. Emma explains that she created the clone because she is in love with Adam. As they repair their friendship, they contemplate what to do with the clones. Adam introduces his clone to Dawn's clone, and the two immediately hit it off. He also gives the insurance money to Rebecca and Harold so they can relocate where no one knows about the clones. Before departing, Adam bids farewell to Dawn and hands the wedding ring to his clone. Months later, Emma graduates and grows closer to Adam. One evening, he prepares dinner for her, and their relationship gradually blossoms. Meanwhile, Adam's clone proposes to Dawn in a bouncy house, as instructed by the real Adam. Dawn accepts, and the two clones go on to live happily ever after.